Hey everyone, John Nowak here, licensed loan officer with New American Funding, and I'm actually sitting here today with Jay Theiss with Synergy Credit Solutions, and we're essentially just going to have a conversation about your credit score, what it means, and some good tips and advice on how you can help increase your credit score. So first and foremost, for everyone out there, essentially what is a credit score? How is it calculated, Jay?
So it used to be that, you could get underwritten for something and people would actually look at you as an individual. Now, these days, it's just a number. It's an algorithm that is spit out based on things that you've done, or honestly, sometimes it's errors that are out there. But it's all just a number. It's an algorithm that's spit out by this company called Fair Isaac Corporation, and that's what really actually counts. And so sometimes the things on your credit score are absolutely fair. Sometimes they're completely unfair. There's so many errors out there, it's just crazy. So, but yeah, it's just a number. You're just a number. Sorry, I know you're an individual, but to the system, you're just a number.
Okay, thank you for that. So, for instance, if I'm a consumer out there, say my name is John Doe, and I call in to me, the licensed loan officer, John Nowak, and I use these apps called My FICO or Credit Karma, and they're telling me that my credit score is around a 740, 750, and I call into the licensed loan officer, they pull my credit, and they tell me it's a 670.
Right, so you're the bad guy.
I'm the bad guy, loan officer's the bad guy, right?
Yeah, it always works that way.
But kind of talk about the different credit scoring systems, why those apps and technology have a different credit score than what us licensed loan officers actually use.
Right, so if you're actually looking to go into debt, like through getting a new credit card or looking at a home loan or something like that, you're going to use, these guys have to use a FICO score. It's from the Fair Isaac Corporation. They create the scores that actually count. Now, when you go out to something like, let's just use a really popular one, Credit Karma, you go to that site, they use a Vantage scoring model. That's what it's called. And it is not the same thing. Now, it kind of mirrors it. All the information that you actually get on the specific trade lines from the bureaus, it's all the same information, but the score is calculated different. So it's kind of unfair to you guys having to break the bad news that, hey, my score is actually lower.
Thank you for that. So, so essentially that's the differences between your actual credit score and these other technologies that calculate your credit score. So let's talk about credit score calculation.
Okay.
How is your credit score actually calculated? How do they come up with that 740 credit score? That's kind of broken it down into a pie, which we're going to show you a slide. It's kind of a pie chart of how it's broken up. So can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing is your payment history. 35% of your credit score, which is a massive amount. When you look at the entire pie chart, 35% is a massive part of your score, and that is payment history. And then the other one that's really, really big is amounts owed. That's 30% of your score. Another really big one is length of credit history. And that's why some people go out there and they're like, man, I hate this credit card, I want to close it. The problem is it's like your oldest credit card, and you wonder, like, why in the world did my score tank after I closed this credit card? Well, it might have been your oldest trade line, So if you have an average length of credit history that's 1 year, but then you have that one card out there that's 10 years old, well, that's really keeping your length of credit history up, and you close that 10-year-old card, all of a sudden it's not showing on your credit report anymore, and your score tanks because 15% of your score just got hammered because you closed your oldest trade line. So it's just things you have to watch out for. Again, according to the system, you're just a number. It spits out a number, and that's just, it is what it is, and it stinks sometimes because sometimes it's completely unfair. But if you just understand a little bit about how it works, then you can manage it a little bit better.
So let's talk about some tips and advice for individuals out there that are trying to build their credit. So for instance, I'm dealing with a client right now that is actually moving back into the country. He is a US citizen, but he does not have a credit score. So what are some tips and tricks and some advice of what individuals can do to develop credit really, really quickly, or even to just help improve their score?
Okay, I would say two things, and I'm going to be mortgage specific here.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So two things that I would do is, number one, you need a secured credit card. And a secured credit card is just something basically where, like, if it's a $500 limit card, you basically send them $500. So it's secured. Another thing you can do on top of that is you can get added as an authorized user. One problem with the mortgage industry, people think, oh, I can get added as an authorized user and I can get credit of my parents' credit card. You know, I can get all this benefit out of being added to my parents' credit card that has a massive limit. It's been open since for 4,000 years. You know, it's got the optimal length of credit history, and they carry a low balance on it. Everything's great, so I'm going to get added as an authorized user. The problem is AUS doesn't like that. So if you want to get an underwriting approval, they're going to see that credit as fake, right? Unless you have your own credit card. So if you do the 1-2 punch of, hey, I'm going to get my own secured credit card, so it's in my name, it's me alone, so I have my credit that I'm establishing, and then you get added as an authorized user. The great thing about getting added as an authorized user is you get benefit in 3 categories. Payment history, that big 35% that I was talking about, the amounts owed. So if they keep a low balance on this credit card, like maybe your parents' credit card or maybe your spouse's credit card or something like that. And then length of credit history is a really big one too. So it kind of maxes out at 25 years, but you find a 10-year-old card, all of a sudden your length of credit history goes from basically nothing all the way up to like 10 years.
Can really help out. Yep. So what about, can you talk a little bit and elaborate on the differences between store credit and revolving credit? Because a lot of people that, a loan officer will go out there and tell them, hey, you need to go establish credit, right? And a lot of them might go to Home Depot or the furniture store and get what they call, some people call store credit. So can you kind of elaborate on the differences between store credit and revolving credit, and which one might help you better?
Yeah, the revolving credit's always going to help you more because it hits several areas of your credit score. But you know what? Adding installment debt is actually a good thing too. And this kind of stinks with people talking about like debt. Like debt's just a bad word, right? But your credit score, you kind of have to deal with debt in order to get a good credit score.
Right.
It kind of stinks. If you're dealing with cash your entire life, you may be the most responsible person on the planet, but you're not building credit. Revolving credit is the easiest and best way to start building your credit. I know credit cards can be bad. Maybe your parents told you, oh, it's horrible to have a credit card, that type of thing. But even something with, like you mentioned, Home Depot, if it has that Visa logo on it, it's revolving, you know? But installment debt is another thing that could help you. But that's just if you're looking to add to an already good scenario. The absolute fastest and best way to build your credit is with revolving. And that's through, getting a secured credit card, especially if you have no credit whatsoever. Getting that secured credit card is one of the first steps to do it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that answer. Now, what about some individuals out there that might be dealing with collections? They went through a bad time in their life, something happened, it was kind of out of their control, or maybe it was a learning curve for them, and unfortunately they have some collections out there. What are some good tips and advice you could give those individuals? What should they do? What should they not do? So on and so forth. Okay.
So I would say the biggest thing not to do is go out and blanket dispute everything. A lot of people will just tell you, oh, you just need to dispute that thing, everything's going to be fine. And the thing is, like when you dispute something, they have to go actually verify. They legally have to. Like, hey, look, you've disputed it. The customer's disputed this trade line, so we have to go verify it. Here's the problem. Like if you go and you dispute something, let's just say it's 5 years old, right? And it has a collection code attached to it, which is a 9. It's the worst code that you can possibly have. For example, a bankruptcy is a 7 code, right?
So bankruptcy, the collection is worse than bankruptcy.
The code, yes, it hurts your score worse. And so on the specific trade line, if it's coded a 9, right, it's in collections. Let's just say it's 5 years old. That code isn't hurting you quite as bad because it's 5 years old. The more time that passes, the less something hurts your score. But if you go and dispute something, and let's just say that they come back and they say, oh yeah, we've got all the information. We keep incredible records. We verified this is your debt. It updates this thing called the date of last activity, right? So all of a sudden the code that was 5 years old and not hurting you so bad is now this month. It's today. And you've just killed your credit score. Like sometimes it can go from hurting you by 5 or 10 points to hurting you by as much as like 40, 50, 60 points.
Wow.
And it can be brutal. So if you go out there and you just blanket dispute everything, hoping for the best, it's like, throw spaghetti against the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can end up hurting your credit score. So it's good to talk to somebody that really knows what they're doing. because, you know, like, let's just say if it's medical, that really doesn't matter as much if you're going for a home loan, right? Because AUS is going to be fine with medical items being in dispute. Well, Fannie, Freddie, and FHA, they're going to be fine with medical items being in dispute. So you can be a little bit more cavalier, you know, with your medical debts. But if it's non-medical and you're looking at disputing this thing, just be really careful, because if you make a payment, if you dispute something, if you do anything that will update that date of last activity, you could really end up hurting your score by bringing a date of last activity forward that has a negative code. So anything that's in collections, you just have to be careful with it, man, because you can really hurt yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom and actually coming in today and shooting this video and giving some good tips and advice for everybody out there watching. So thank you for watching. And again, my name is John Nowak with New American Funding, and this is Jay Theiss with Synergy Credit Solutions.